In this video essay, we're going to look back at Sliders, a very interesting and intriguing science fiction show, which does have a small, not a large one, but a small connection to George R.R. Martin. So what is Sliders? Well, if we have to put it in a nutshell, it's essentially a lot like Quantum Leap, where we have a band of protagonists and they go through these alternate dimensions about where Earth or the universe might end up in a different place. And obviously, being science fiction, it can go all over the place. It can be sort of a good future or bad future, or good past or bad past. You know, there are episodes where the wars turn out differently, right? Hitler wins and things like that. Or they're going to be like sort of just interesting episodes where what if, like, for whatever reason, there's peace around the world? How does that work out? And the obvious kind of episodes where they meet basically themselves and they meet basically what they would have been in a different life and so on and so forth. But Sliders is a little bit different from Quantum Leap in that Quantum Leap sort of Sam is forced into traveling over and over again throughout time. This one's a little bit different in that the Sliders want to travel to these different worlds, and so that's a little bit of a twist. So it's more of an adventure series where they want to go into these different alternative dimensions. And again, depending on the episode, they'll be caught up in a really big conspiracy, or they have to solve a mystery, or help out people, etc., or they're dealing with personal problems, and the quote alternate Earth is sort of reflecting their own personal problems. So a bit of an interesting show. I would caution, however, I did see a lot of Sliders, but I did not see the entire series from beginning to end, and they changed the casting a lot, except for one cast member. They kept changing the cast, and while the early seasons I'm very confident in, those were interesting and very serious and really well thought out and really well written. The later part of the series, for most people, the quality dropped off markedly, so that I'm a little bit less confident. I would say that it seemed to me that it was very friendly and open, so you can just sort of drop in into any episode once you know the beginning premise. Obviously, it helps if you watch the whole thing because the characters do develop over time, but I think per episode, the average was very high. I was never really bored with almost any episode, and it was very charming and well done. But if you want the more quote unquote hard science fiction or more serious science fiction, then the serious science fiction is in the early seasons, and you want those. If you just want the adventure or just like the whole premise itself, then the later seasons are going to be just fine. And again, mostly all the episodes are very open and friendly to new viewers. And in terms of the George R. R. Martin connection, it's actually very interesting because he had an idea that was almost very similar to Sliders, because he had this idea called The Doors, which he actually sold off, and they did filming and everything. So apparently in the vault there is The Doors, and his idea was very much the same thing of kind of like these people going through alternate dimensions and we follow their adventures. However, several differences. They didn't call it The Doors when they actually filmed it because there was the Oliver Stone film, so they wanted to differentiate themselves from that. Why? That's kind of weird, but that's what they did. So the actual official production is called something else. And George liked the story just fine, but ironically, he left that to do Game of Thrones. And so he finished it up. He finished off his contract. He was kind of disappointed they didn't go through with it, but luckily for us, he didn't do it, because if he did, he might have gotten distracted. So there you are. So it's kind of an interesting way that Game of Thrones is tied to Sliders in a weird way. There's some people who accuse Sliders of actually stealing from George. George has clarified, no, it's just two similar ideas. It's very interesting that they happened around the same time, but yeah, there's no real like official genetic connection, but it almost happened because apparently one writer for Sliders almost worked with George. So there you are. So it's interesting how there was an almost simultaneous like appearance of these two science fiction shows, but one by George R. R. Martin, but it unfortunately didn't happen. Obviously, if George had done it, it would have been interesting to do a compare and contrast, because obviously he has a much darker sense of humor. And apparently, the cast members of Sliders are still open to coming back and rebooting the series, because they were kind of disappointed where the series ended up, but they're really open if they want to do it again, that they'd be willing to come back. I myself give it a very strong vote of confidence, but this is not an analytic essay. Usually, if I'm going to do an analysis, I'm going to be giving a grade, but I can't do that because, again, my memory of the series is dim. But in terms of special effects, I will say, though, that they have dated badly in some cases, so you have to be careful on that. Again, even though they did work with a network and they had a little bit of money, it is what it is. They have to work with constrained resources. So, again, I'm confident that people will have fun with just episodes in general, but if I had to do a sharp analysis of the better seasons, the worst seasons, better episodes, worse episodes, I'd have to do, a little bit more research. I can't give you that, so I'm not going to give a grade. I will just say it's highly recommended. Just try a few episodes. I think for the most part, people will enjoy it. All right, this has been a look back at Sliders, a very interesting science fiction show with a time travel twist, which was very similar to the work of George R. R. Martin. Thanks for listening.